Want to break down on some of the latest topics from college to the pros? We interview many individuals to share their knowledge about the news stories surrounding the teams and its players. This is Nothing But That Sports Talk. Welcome to Nothing But That Sports Talk. I'm Rafique Louison alongside Knox Louison. A rare FaceTime appearance for Knox because we usually do this in person, but since we're all quarantined and social distancing, this is the best way to do it for the foreseeable future until everything gets back to normal. Now, in your mind, like, how is life without live sports in the past month?
Oh man, life without live sports has been a challenge. I found myself in terms of like stuff that I've been looking at, sports related. I've been watching a lot of like LeBron highlights, Kobe highlights. The NBA's been releasing like top plays of the past couple seasons and stuff like that. So I've been watching those. It's hard, man. It's hard. It's really hard.
I know. No March Madness, a virtual WNBA and NFL draft. But there's just
it's been
a
crazy,
lot
man.
going on.
We're supposed to be getting the playoffs this week, right? It should have been starting now.
Yeah, it should have been. But you know what? There is a glimmer of hope. Because Adam Silver just opened up training camp so players can do individual workouts.
So, starting May 1st, yeah.
Yeah. What you think about that? You think it's the process of it coming back, or is this a ray of hope?
I think there's a couple of sports who can make it through these tough times, and they can still play the sports in empty arenas. I think you can potentially have basketball without fans. You can definitely have golf. I think golf and tennis, they'll be fine, and they'll probably be the first sports to open back up. Football's going to be challenging. Basketball's going to be challenging. Combat sports like MMA and boxing going to be really challenging because not only do you have to definitely interact with people, but you also, they are really dependent on live gates, like people actually coming to the events and selling tickets and stuff like that. So I think those sports will take a while to come back. But I think, May 1st being the first day that teams can practice in facilities in states where the ban has been lifted, I think that's a good step in the right direction. And when I say the right direction, I mean just in terms of returning to some level of sports.
Yeah, because this is a lot. Well, it's just tough to live in. It's a tough environment to live in because your safety is number one priority for all the players going on. And at least you get to actually have a video game league like the NBA 2K20 Pro Players Tournament, and then you have the MLB the show, the Pros Tournament, like, and also
FIFA too, FIFA and INAX. Sorry.
What do you think about all that compared to an actual live sport?
I think those leagues did a good thing by launching those e-game tournaments and stuff like that. Number one, it brings credibility to the video games and the quality of how good those games are. Number two, gives fans an opportunity to see their favorite players and favorite athletes in a different light that they don't normally get to see them in. And they get to see them in a light that but it's kind of similar to what they do. So if you are a gamer who likes to play 2K or FIFA or NASCAR and you see your favorite driver or athlete doing it, it kind of connects you to them a little bit better. So I think it's a good look. I think it also shows that there's a place for it. Some people might trivialize and say, "Oh, well, video games are just blah blah blah," or like, no, there's importance to it, and there's a fan base and there's the demographic of people who partake and who enjoy it. It's profitable, and I think it's been a good thing.
Yeah, because I remember back when sports gaming just started, it's usually just a game where you literally just play regular season games and random games and stuff. But year after year, it expanded between my player storylines to the in-the-door neighborhoods and all the stuff, making it the whole purpose of doing NBA Street Bowl games that me and Mom was talking about earlier. Like, these NBA video games, these sports video games in general, literally bring importance to sports culture.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They do.
And it even brings more hosted opportunities for the guys that host NBA 2K TV. Like, as a guy that played NBA 2K, what do you love doing most about playing NBA video games and Madden video games?
So I haven't played Madden in a while because I'm an old school ESPN NFL 2K fan, and I used to think those games were much better. And I really don't think Madden's that great of a game. I just think it's the only option, so people always play it. As for 2K, I'm a little different from everybody else. Like, I really don't play online just because I don't play it enough to be good at it to go against people online. You know what I mean? But I think when I play it, like I enjoy playing, the seasons and the fantasy modes and the dynasty modes and those type of things where you have these long seasons and you can draft a player and play till LeBron retires and stuff like that. I definitely enjoy it. And like I said before, and like you mentioned, it really brings importance to the place that sports video games have in our society. Not only as a temporary fix when we don't have sports, but also as its own separate thing. You can play NBA 2K all year round. You don't have to wait for an off season. You can always play. You can always be competitive when you play it. So I think, like you said, it's very important.
Exactly. And you know what? If it wasn't for sports gaming, I don't know what the world would look like. But speaking of what the world would look like, the world is about to experience a Michael Jordan documentary. When you think about the first couple episodes of Michael Jordan's documentary, The Last Dance, like, what are the positives, what are the negatives for you?
So, what I really like about the first two episodes that we saw was it really. So Michael Jordan is this larger than life character. He's a legend. He's the legend. He's widely considered the greatest player of all time. And if not, it's a thin list of people who can even take credit to that title. And there are a lot of stories about him. A lot of them we don't know if they're true. They're just myths and legends. So one of the main stories you always hear about Michael Jordan is his competitive drive and how difficult he was on his teammates. And that's something you just hear players say, you hear coaches say. But now we got video footage of it. There's footage of him yelling at Ron Harper. There's footage of him yelling at his teammates and things like that. Not saying that's good or bad, but it gives proof to a story that we heard that we might not have never gotten a chance to see. And I think the fact that this season is shot documenting the final season, you see that it's not this easy ride to a championship. The first five championships, for the most part, they kind of dominated the teams they played against, not just in the finals, but on the road to the finals. So to see this last season and to see that, hey, they start off the season barely 500. Hey, they start off the season without Scottie Pippen, and there's more to that story. It wasn't just that, he was just hurt. It shows you the turmoil that they experienced, and it showed you that they didn't have this cakewalk to 6 championships. It showed you that, that last season was definitely rough.
Yeah, especially with the old Scottie Pippen storyline. But let's just get back to this right now. Like, when I was watching the fact that Scottie Pippen won out of the Chicago Bulls back then, like, all you can think is, why Scottie Pippen? Don't you want to win a championship with the Chicago Bulls? I mean, at my younger self, if I was watching it back then when everything was actually live, I would have probably felt a little bit different because, well, he's done enough for the Chicago Bulls. So he may not need to stay another year playing for Chicago. But in your mind, when the whole Scottie Pippen wanting out of Chicago's go happened, like in live actuality as a kid, like, do you feel any different for what you feel right now?
So, good question. So, just to put some context, for the younger audience, things weren't the same back then as they are today. Like, we didn't have this constant sports coverage and sports memes and websites and social media just allocated to sports. So when you heard a sports story, it was kind of few and far between. You might hear it Monday and then hear a follow-up on it until the following Monday. These stories didn't linger on, every single morning. What's Scottie Pippen going to do? What's Scottie Pippen going to do? So there were rumors that he wanted out of Chicago, but it was never really any depth to it. There was never really any backstory as to why he went out of Chicago. And it wasn't this well-known thing. Like, yes, ESPN reported it, but it's not like how they report things today. So much like I said before to Michael Jordan, where we now have proof behind everything, now we see Scottie Pippen being upset and, apparently get into an argument on the bus with his general manager and things like that. But in terms of, do I think Scottie had a legitimate beef? Yes and no. Number one, he signed the contract, back in '91 for the amount that it was and for the length that it was. So you can't really argue with the contract that you signed. But the second part is, yeah, he absolutely deserved more money than what he was making for the Bulls at that time. But unfortunately, contracts are contracts, man.
Yeah. And I love the whole backstory that they told, like during Michael Jordan's rookie season and the season where Michael Jordan had like the long term injury.
Yeah.
They came into the playoffs with only 30 wins. They got swept by the Boston Celtics. But Michael Jordan was out of his mind in game two. He was out of his mind.
He was
And
on
there
a
was
different
a whole
level.
backstory about that where the critics, even the late David Stern, gave his thoughts on how great Michael Jordan was when he dropped 63 points on Larry Bird's Boston Celtics. But it just goes to show you that, it's going to take a while before you get to where he is right. It took him a while before he got to where he is right now. And the whole backstory with the coach not using Michael Jordan, but instead they rely on Paxson. But Paxson came through for Chicago in one game. And you know
He,
what? In today's NBA, it would have been a big mistake not using your top guy. Like Michael Jordan was a top guy before he got Steve Kerr, and Scottie Pippen.
well, I'm not sure about that because Kawhi Leonard load managed and he load managed his way all the way to a championship.
That's true.
So I think a lot of times, athletes want to do what they do best, and what they do best is their particular sport. So a basketball player is always going to want to play basketball. A football player is always going to want to play football. But you, as a manager or a coach or a GM, you kind of have to look out for their best interests. Like it's probably for the better that he wasn't playing those games. They couldn't risk not just from a financial standpoint of your star player getting injured, but also from a team standpoint. Like how good can we be if you're not 100%? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think the coach is just looking out for him like, listen, man, you're not 100% yet. I know you're ahead of time, but take it easy, and we'll unleash you when you unleash you. And I think even though he was unable to beat the Celtics, I think it was a good learning experience for him. It was a good experience for the NBA in terms of showcasing his talent. Like, imagine if you saw a dude drop 63 points and his team lost. You would think, like, okay, that guy's really good. So this is being honest about it. So I think it was a good precursor to his success to come in the later years. And once again, to go back to the point, we saw that he didn't play a lot of games. That's if you look back at just like stats or look back at his card and his career statistics, you're like, oh well, that season he didn't play a lot of games. What's the story to that? Now we got The Last Dance, and it tells you what the story was behind that. He was only playing a couple minutes, to basically load manage back in the day.
Yeah, and Last Dance, you always gave like a little backstory to Phil Jackson announcing that, you know what, it's time for me to hang it up. I mean, but I like the backstory because it goes to show you that he retired because he felt that it was his time to retire as a coach. I mean,
well, no, that's not true. He didn't. He retired because they didn't want to extend his contract. So Jerry Krause said, "I'm not extending your contract. Like this is the end of it." So he was like, "Well, if you're not going to extend my contract, I'm going to retire." So again, and that's where the Last Dance comes in handy, and it tells you the backstory behind that and gives you the interworkings of the relationship or the lack thereof relationship that Phil Jackson had with Jerry Krause at that point in time.
Yeah, and I know we're gonna get a lot more backstory later today. Right, this is their episode 3 and 4, or should I say when they air episode 3 and 4? Like, what can you expect from the next 2 episodes of The Last Dance?
Well, I think the next 2 episodes are going to touch on Scottie's his beef with organization. I think also it's going to touch on Dennis Rodman and his impact on the team, which it his impact really shaped those last 3 championships. And I wanted to make a point real quick. A lot of times in modern time when we talk about basketball from the 90s, we talk about the Bulls dynasty. There's this perception that Scottie Pippen was Michael Jordan's Robin. Take it from me, when I was a kid watching basketball, he was not considered his Robin. This idea that he was his sidekick is new, and it's something that people say to kind of boost Michael Jordan's legacy and put the distance between him and Scottie Pippen. He was not Michael Jordan's Rodman at all. It was literally called Superman, Batman, and Rodman. Like, he was on par with Michael Jordan in many different ways. And, not to discredit Michael Jordan's greatness by any means, but Jordan retired, and the Bulls only lost 2 more games. They went to the conference finals with Scottie Pippen, and they were one bad call away from going to the NBA finals. So the idea that he was somehow Michael Jordan's Robin is totally nonsensical. It's totally erroneous. Scottie Pippen was not as good an offensive player as Michael Jordan, but defensively, probably the greatest perimeter defender we've ever seen in basketball history. Like, he covered the floor second to maybe only LeBron. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, damn, it just goes to show that you're taking a deeper dive into the greatness of one of the greatest teams of all time.
Yeah.
And now we're about to touch upon another topic, the NFL draft. What are your impressions about the WNBA and the NFL drafts?
I actually didn't watch the WNBA draft, and I saw a little bit of my fault, I'm sorry. I saw a little bit of the NFL draft. I think it was odd. It was really weird to see. It kind of took the excitement out of it, if I'm just being very honest about it. The guys kind of knew where they were going before they got called. Their hats were already in their houses and things like that. I guess it was good to see the intimate setting of, the players being amongst their family. That part of it, I believe, is good. But I think as soon as we can go back to having a draft at a location and seeing guys walk on the stage and shake the commissioner's hand, I think as soon as we can get back to that level of normalcy, we should definitely take that route. I wasn't a fan of it. I'm not saying that I don't understand why it happened. It needed to happen the way it did. And they did the best that they could with the circumstances in which they had to do it. But going forward, I would like to see a more formal situation for the draft.
Yeah, but keep in mind, between Micheal Jordan's special being pushed up to the month of April and the NBA, the WNBA and the NFL draft going virtual, entertainment is a necessity in times like this. Because it's like, where else are you gonna? Because how else are you gonna get to do their drafts? Like the drafts should always go on no matter what, because you never know when it's gonna come back. Like this isn't gonna last too long. It's not gonna last 2 or 3 years. They're not gonna give up 2 or 3 consecutive seasons or postpone 2 or 3 consecutive seasons. Like the sport needs no better than that.
I agree. The sport has to go on. So yeah.
Like the drafts have to go on, and let's just hope. I don't know what they're gonna do with the NBA draft when it comes around, but of course they can't do any events in June, so obviously that's gonna go virtual as well.
Yeah, but it's gonna be weird. Like they might have the draft before like the season comes back. Like it's a weird kind of paradox to be in. We're not sure how that's gonna play out, but we'll see. But yeah. I think, like I said, I understand why they had the virtual drafts, and I think they did a good job of having them. I just think that there's something inherently missing in terms of like a sense of accomplishment. Part of the pageantry of these drafts when they had them in arenas and things like that was seeing that accomplishment, almost like school graduation.
Exactly. I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, you walk on a stage, you graduated, you're leaving your amateur career behind, and now you're becoming a professional. So that part of it I miss, and that part of it I understand the importance of. But again, I know why it had to be virtual. They did the best thing, they did the right thing, but I'm ready for things to go back to be, not normal, but closer to that type of setting where the kids get to walk the stage and shake their commissioner's hands.
Exactly, and not to mention we want to see Joe Burrow, who got drafted to the Cincinnati Bengals, show his stuff, because the Bengals, they were atrocious last season. Like, Andy Dalton went from one of the greatest seasons of his career to going with us up until mid to late November, and when they was against the Jets, and no surprise that your team ended up being the first victim to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Jets need to step up defensively. And hopefully those draft picks that the Jets have, along with the Giants, they can improve defensively to give the quarterback some more breathing room.
Well, I mean, both of them drafted offensive linemen with their first pick, so I don't know. It shows you just how much they're really valuing defense. But I think both teams will be better going forward.
Yeah, they really do. And, well, this will end the episode of Nothing But That Sports Talk. I'm Rafique Louison alongside Knox Louison. Thank you for stopping by. And, to those of you who are just watching, get your head in the game and stay safe.
That's right. Stay safe, everybody.